Hello and welcome to Manny Bil. I'm going on a little trip to the hardware store or the something like that. I'm not actually sure what it's called in English. I'm going to buy some stuff for my living quarters, and it'll take sort of 20 minutes each way, and I might do 1 or 2 videos on the trip just to keep things going. To have a good time while I'm driving, which is otherwise pretty boring to drive a car, in my opinion. I don't have anything particularly against it, but it doesn't bring me deep happiness to drive a car, right? But there's a lot of goings on at the moment regarding metaphysics, not least all the videos that came in the following the so-called debate I had with Stefan Molyneux on his show. After a couple of weeks, he has made a couple of videos and an essay concerning metaphysics, at least to some extent, and I have made some deconstructions and so on following this. So I'm not going into those thoughts or critiques or deconstructions in particular. I'm rather presenting some other thoughts I have around, let's say, why there might actually be a lot of problems in philosophy, which is also something that Stefan Molyneux alludes to, that it's incredible how difficult it seems to solve these problems. Now, the problem for him is he doesn't understand the core problem in metaphysics, so he's possibly never going to get anywhere other than, telling people that they're full of shit and crazy and so on, right? Trying to destroy the world, destroy humanity, something like that. And the level of anger and venom he spits at people is proportional to the level of ridiculousness he believes that this metaphysics is, right? So he believes that people are trying to tell him that elephants don't exist or something like that, right? And that's not really the case if you're a good philosopher, right? There might be some people doing that, and that complicates it further, right? But it is foundational. The problems must be foundational, in my opinion, right? And one of the things that leads me to this, that the problem of philosophy must be sought in the foundations, because the foundations are, for good reasons, obvious reasons, are responsible for the rest of your philosophy. So if the foundations, as I've repeatedly said, doesn't work, or is fallacious or incorrect or contradictory, maybe, I mean, if it's not contradictory, you can't claim it to be incorrect, right? Because what are you comparing it to? But at least when there's something that is contradictory, that violates its own basis, right? Then there must be something you can find, right? And I'm not saying there's only one approach to metaphysics, but approaches that are self-contradictory, they don't work, right? And that's what I tried to point out with Stefan Molyneux. But as I mentioned before, there's something else that points me in the direction that the problem, and when we go all the way through epistemology and ethics, that there's a, what's it called? A department, I was going to say, that's not the right word. There's an area of thought or philosophy called meta-ethics, which I have mentioned a few times before, right? I've not delved too deep into it because it's completely ridiculously complicated, right? And the reason why there is something called meta-ethics is, in my opinion, because metaphysics and therefore also epistemology hasn't been settled, right? Because most philosophers do not grasp this problem, this contradiction. It's almost like it's willfully ignored. It almost seems to like that to me, right? And I was sort of a part of that when I started to philosophize, right? But I kept coming back to this problem, and I didn't really understand why. My mind sort of swarmed around this, right? Until at some point it dawned on me. Suddenly it was like a veil was removed, right? To be a little, prosaic about it. What's it called? Poetic, maybe? There was a crow walking around on the street eating something. That's a weird bird. And metaethics is a symptom of the problem, in my opinion, right? Because I have seen charts of metaethics, which is, if you look it up, it can be seriously complicated, right? And it's so academically mind-fucked that it's completely useless, in my opinion, right? And because they can't figure it out, they keep adding new, area. There's sort of a roadmap through this meta-ethic. If you're this, you can go this way, and if you're that, you can go that way, and if you're the other, you can go the other way, so on, down through this sort of maze of possibilities in meta-ethics, right? And then if they can't get through it either way, they bring in some new boxes and say, what about, intuition, something, whatever, right? It's just a mind frack, right? And I saw a chart of this once where somebody has labeled these boxes in this chart of metaethics with either being a problem of semantics or a problem of epistemology or a problem of metaphysics, right? And this just spells problems to me, right? Because it's about what is the meaning of a word, right? But that has to be settled before you use words. But what do we mean by knowledge? Well, there you have to do epistemology, right? And what about metaphysics? Well, it's foundational. You need to do this before you even approach meta-ethics, right? So it's all one big mindfuck, this academic philosophy at this point, right? So what's the most foundational problem of metaethics? Well, that must be, if you're just keeping semantics on the shelf, right? It must be metaphysics. So the problem is basically in metaphysics, in my opinion, right? And when you look at metaphysics, there is this problem that I tried to point out in materialism, which is by far the most normal in common people's, and for good reasons. That's how you grow up, right? That's all this, the Stefan Molyneux talks about, that's how you interact with the world, and so on, and so on, and so on. Fine. It's just not correct metaphysics. Because there's a built-in contradiction in your claims, right? You might not, your claims doesn't, if the claims don't match what you're experiencing, and experience is what you have to go with, right? Then there's this contradiction in your statement about there's an outside and then there are experiences, which is basically the materialist version, right? That ends up with a hard problem of consciousness. So either people are materialists and they don't get it, right? Then there are those who actually get it. But then there are all sorts of weird kind of monistic and idealistic, whatever, all sorts of attempts at explaining what is going on from an idealist point of view. And most of them seemingly want to go in that realm then you do not have access to from the principles of idealism, right? It's like they say, okay, but then everything is in mind and experience. Then everything, as Bernardo Castro says, then it's mind everywhere. No, you can't do that either, right? You can't just extend one thing to everything, right? You get freedom to do whatever you want with that thing you do not have access to, right? There might be a reason why you don't have access to it. It's because it's so paradoxically, paradigmatically completely different, that it's unreachable, right? And because there's no way of going there without an experience, and that means you're still in an experience. You have to leave it alone, right? You have to say it's unknowable. You can't even, as I said, you can't even say I don't know, because that would, implicitly give the notion that knowledge is actually possible, right? You only say I don't know to something that is knowable, right? Otherwise you say that's impossible, that's nonsense, or something like that. So those who are idealists go crazy in all sorts of woo-woo shit, right? Those who are materialists, they don't even get the point, right? So what is left is, skeptical idealists like me, right? And they seem to be few and far between. And maybe that's the whole point of it. The point of why there is a problem with philosophy. Because nobody seems to be able to get it right. No matter how you turn this metaphysics around, people seem to want to either go where they shouldn't, or don't understand where they should think, right? So there's a very few of us left who are actually able to get the point, but then don't want to go and fabulate about that which we do not have access to, right? That leaves a very, very small amount of people left who actually get things right. And I might even be wrong in my philosophy. I'm not saying I'm right, but at least I am convinced that this is the closest yet. And please illuminate me if somebody has a better explanation, please, to how you start off with your metaphysics, right? Because just finding the problem and identifying the problem and deciding not to go further than you can, that's just the start. Then you have to do the rest of the metaphysics, the experiences and your cognitions and memories and reasoning and rationalization and knowledge and ethics, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to do, right? Where it can also go wrong, and it's seriously wrong if you haven't got this base right. And that's why these things haven't been settled in philosophy. And that's why I'm very confident that it's a pretty good idea that I'm writing this book. At least it seems to be close to something that might approach this final solution. I don't want to use that. Rewind and erase, right? This finally have some kind of progress, but it takes a lot of convincing, right? Because when people have invested their time and money and reputation and so on a particular set of ideas, they are not likely going to change them just because somebody wrote a book, right? So it will take a lot of hardship before there will be any kind of approach to a consensus on philosophical ideas, right? So if this is it, I'm not saying, I might be wrong. It might be completely crazy, and I'll have to eat my own straw hat, right? And I'm willing to take that chance. Somebody's got to do it, right? And a good sense of the problem that this kind of attempt faces is the reaction from a dude like Stefan Molyneux, right? He's a laughing stock, in my opinion, right? I'm sort of glad that I have such a sort of a strong backbone that I'm not feeling. I mean, I felt offended by his behavior. I was treated like I was a complete fucking stupid idiot, right? But I'm not taking it to heart. I'm not sitting crying at home, right? I'd rather hit back with a deconstruction and telling me what a piece of shit he is, right? That's how I roll. So I think I'm a pretty much, what's it called, alpha? I have alpha waves, alpha blood. but I'm not sort of this flaunting cock-a-doodle-doo alpha male flashing his tattoos and so on, right? I'm sort of a calm and collected, strong alpha male who don't give a shit, right? I don't care. I don't give a shit. I know what I want and I know what I like, right? I know where to go. I know what to do. I don't give a shit, right? And sort of, I think this is a kind of, I'm approaching Nietzsche's Überman, right? And I'm not. It's not in a sense that I'm above everybody else, because I'm actually very equality minded, but in the right way, right? Equality is not taking from somebody who has something and give to somebody else who doesn't have something, just like Joe Biden is doing now. Those who had student debt, they have to get money from those who didn't take student debt to finance their fucking student debt, right? That's not equality. That is fucking, I mean, it's extortion, theft, everything under the sun, corruption, moral hazard, whatever, right? All the bad things you can possibly conjure up of words, right? Everybody should have that shot. But it doesn't mean that they should use somebody else as the tool to get what they want, right? Mothers shouldn't be able to destroy their families in order to control everything in their family, right? That's not equality. That's just power, threat of violence and death, right? I'm all for equality. I'm all for you should be able to do what you want, but you have to be in a situation. The situation has to be that you need to get all the consequences of your actions. Be those consequences good or bad, right? And I can tell you what those are, but as long as you get the consequences you create, then you decide whether or not they're good or bad, right? Don't give me the bad consequences and yourself the good consequences. Then fuck you, right? So, it's just I feel that I have reached a level where I have a high level of clear thinking in my system, so to say, right? I'm not easily impressed by stuff. There might be some old stuff in me still, where I sort of, and when I started to rationalize a bit, oh no, wait, hang on a second, they're just trying to impress you, right? I feel that it works in many situations where people sense that they can run around with me, right? And that's actually beneficial for me. So I can only encourage that you become what you're supposed to be, so to say, right? I'm looking for a quote from a movie, but I forgot the exact quote, so never mind. So I'm close to the store I have to go to, so I hope it can make kind of sense, these thoughts about metaphysics and philosophy in general and the problems in philosophy. Let me have your opinion about this, and how if you agree with me or don't agree, fine. Let me have your opinion and ideas. Maybe we can help each other this way. So it's not only me telling you what to do, right? Which is not something I'm into, right? I don't like telling people what to do. I like people to be self-sufficient. I like people to. I'm the type of person who wants to be inspired and not be lectured, right? I want to be inspired by people. Don't want people to lecture me of what I should do, right? Because that's disrespectful to their intelligence, right? So, okay, this is all for now. See you next time.